Life, as I knew it, was fucking perfect. I'm Alex Mercer, a guy who had it all, a smoking hot wife, Jenna, 3 badass little boys who looked up to me like I was Superman, and a tech startup that was just beginning to make waves in the industry. Jenna and I, we were that couple everyone envied, or, at least, that's what I liked to believe. Our chemistry was off the charts, both in and out of bed. She was not just my wife, she was the pulse in my veins, the rhythm of my heart. We met back in college, UMass to be precise. I was the quarterback of the football team, and she was the stunning cheerleader with brains that could put anyone to shame. Cliché, I know, but fuck it, it was our story, and it was perfect. After graduation, we didn't waste any time making things official. Jenna landed a job teaching high school English in Dallas, and I snagged a position at a promising tech firm. Life was on an upward trajectory, and nothing seemed capable of derailing it. Our first major fight was over something as trivial as a car. I had my eyes set on a 1968 Shelby Cobra GT 500. Candy apple red, white stripes down the middle, fuck, it was a beauty. I could afford it, no problem, but Jenna, she had other ideas. Alex, do we really need another car? Especially one that costs as much as a small house? Jenna's tone was a mix of amusement and disbelief as she stood in our kitchen, arms crossed. I leaned against the counter, trying to look nonchalant. Come on, Jen. It's not just any car. It's a classic. Plus, I've worked my ass off. We can afford a little splurge. She shook her head, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips despite her attempt to stay stern. Your definition of a little splurge is vastly different from mine, Mr. Mercer. That was Jenna, always able to diffuse the situation with humor. We didn't always see eye to eye, but damn, did I love her for it. We compromised, like we always did. No Shelby Cobra, but instead, a vacation to the Bahamas. Fair trade, if you ask me. Life rolled on smoothly after that. Jenna and I, we were in sync, a team. Our boys, Jake, Liam, and Noah, were growing up fast, each of them a bundle of energy and laughter that filled our home with endless joy. We lived close to my folks, which I thought was great. My dad, a retired football coach, and my mom, a high school principal, were thrilled to have their grandkids nearby. My brother, Chris, was the only odd one out, living his life somewhat in the shadows of the family. But that's a story for another time. Alex, can we talk? Jenna's voice snapped me out of my reverie. I looked up to see her standing in the doorway of our home office, an unreadable expression on her face. Sure, babe. What's up? I swiveled in my chair to face her, expecting another discussion about the boys or maybe plans for our next family vacation. She hesitated, a rare uncertainty flickering in her eyes. It's important. Let's sit down. The seriousness in her tone had alarm bells ringing in my head. We moved to the living room, and I braced myself for what was coming. Little did I know, my perfect life was about to get a dose of reality I wasn't prepared for. Alex, I'm pregnant, she blurted out, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, the world stopped. Joy, confusion, and a hint of fear mingled in my chest. That's amazing, isn't it? I managed to say, my mind racing. Another kid? Could we handle it? Of course, we could. We were the Mercers. Jenna didn't share my enthusiasm. She looked away, her hands fidgeting in her lap. There's more, she said, her voice so low I had to lean in to catch her words. I reached for her hand, trying to offer comfort, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. We always do. She met my gaze, tears brimming in her eyes. Alex, I don't know how to say this, but the baby, it's not yours. The floor might as well have opened up and swallowed me whole. Not mine? How? Why? A million questions, each more painful than the last, spiraled through my mind. Jenna, what the fuck are you talking about? My voice was a mix of disbelief and anger, a stark contrast to the calm demeanor I usually prided myself on. She flinched at my tone, and that's when I knew. My perfect life, my perfect wife, my perfect fucking world, it was all a lie. The silence that followed my outburst was deafening. Jenna's confession hung in the air between us like a thick fog, impenetrable and suffocating. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, each beat a deafening echo of the word of betrayal. Alex, please, let me explain, Jenna pleaded, her voice trembling with emotion. Explain? How the fuck do you explain this, Jenna? My voice was a roar, fueled by a cocktail of shock, anger, and heartbreak. Who? When? Why? She wiped away a tear, taking a deep breath as if bracing herself against the storm she knew was coming. It's Chris. My brother. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. My brother? My fucking brother, Jenna? I stood up, my body shaking with a rage I'd never felt before. How could you? Jenna stood too, her body language defensive yet pleading. It was a mistake, Alex. It only happened once. I was confused, and Chris was there, and you fucked him? I spat the words out, each one laced with venom. You destroyed our family for a fucking mistake? I'm so sorry, Alex. I never meant for any of this to happen. I love you. I love our family. It was the biggest mistake of my life, she sobbed, her tears flowing freely now. Sorry doesn't fucking cut it, Jenna. I yelled, my voice echoing off the walls of our once happy home. You've ruined everything. How long? How long have you been lying to me? It was just that one time, I swear. I realized immediately it was a mistake. I've been living with this guilt every day, she cried, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. A mistake? You call sleeping with my brother a mistake? I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and devoid of any real humor. You've made a fool out of me, Jenna. Out of all of us. I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But we can get through this, Alex. We can work it out, for the sake of our boys, for the sake of our family, she said, reaching out to me, desperation in her eyes. I recoiled from her touch as if burned. Work it out? You think we can just work it out? I shook my head, disbelief and anger swirling within me. You've broken us, Jenna. There's no coming back from this. I'll do anything, Alex. Please, don't give up on us. Don't give up on me, she begged, her voice breaking. Give up on you? I laughed again, the sound more bitter than before. Jenna, you gave up on us the moment you decided to betray me with my own brother. You made your choice. Now, you have to live with it. I turned away from her, unable to bear the sight of her tears, her guilt, her betrayal. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, each one more painful than the last. My brother, my wife, the life I thought we had built together, all of it was a lie. Alex, please. Jenna's voice was a whisper, a final plea for forgiveness, for understanding, for anything. But it was too late. The damage was done. The trust was shattered, and with it, my heart. I walked away, leaving her standing alone in the living room of our now broken home. The home that once echoed with laughter and love was now nothing more than a mausoleum of our shattered dreams. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, a stark contrast to the fiery hell I'd just walked out of. The stars above, once a source of wonder and beauty, now seemed cold and indifferent to my suffering. "Fuck," I whispered to the uncaring night. How did it all come to this? The night air did little to quell the inferno of rage and betrayal burning through my veins. Each step away from the house, away from Jenna, felt like walking through quicksand, every moment dragging me deeper into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My brother, Chris, my own fucking blood, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. And Jenna, the woman I had built my life around, had shattered everything with a single confession. I needed answers, and there was only one place to get them. My feet moved of their own accord, propelling me towards the one person I never thought I'd confront in anger. Chris's apartment was a 20-minute drive away, but I barely remembered the journey. My mind was a cacophony of hurt, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of loss. Banging on Chris's door at 2 a.m., I was a man possessed. The door swung open, revealing a disheveled Chris, his eyes wide with surprise and something else, guilt, maybe fear. "Alex? What the fuck, man?" "It's the middle of the night," he stammered, stepping back as I barged into his apartment. "We need to talk," I growled, my voice low and dangerous, a stark contrast to the confusion written all over his face. "Talk? About what?" His attempt at playing dumb only fueled my anger. "Don't play fucking games with me, Chris. You know exactly why I'm here." I was practically spitting the words, my fists clenched at my sides to prevent them from doing something I might regret. Chris's face paled, and he swallowed hard. Shit, Alex, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out like this." "Sorry? You're sorry?" I laughed, a sound so devoid of humor it chilled even my own blood. "You fuck my wife, and all you can say is sorry?" "It was a mistake, Alex. A huge fucking mistake. I was drunk, and Jenna was upset about something, and one thing led to another." His voice trailed off as he realized how pathetic his excuses sounded. "A mistake? Is that what we're calling it now? You betray your brother, and it's just a fucking mistake?" I took a step closer, my rage a tangible force filling the room. "Alex, please, I know I fucked up. I know there's no excuse for what I did, but I'm begging you, man, don't let this destroy our family." Chris's voice cracked, the weight of his guilt finally breaking through his feeble attempts at justification. "Our family?" I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "You destroyed our family the moment you decided to cross that line. How could you do this to me? To us?" "I don't know, Alex. I really don't. I wasn't thinking. I fucked up, okay? I fucked up big time." Chris looked defeated, the magnitude of his actions finally dawning on him. "Fucked up? You're damn right you fucked up. You and Jenna both." The words were like venom on my tongue, each one laced with the pain and betrayal that had become my constant companions. "I'll do anything to make this right, Alex." "Anything," Chris pleaded, his eyes searching mine for a sign of forgiveness, a sign of hope. But there was no forgiveness in my heart. No hope. Only a deep, unyielding pain that threatened to consume me. "Make it right? You can't make this right, Chris. Some things can't be undone." My voice was cold, final. I turned to leave, the weight of the world on my shoulders. Behind me, Chris's sobs filled the room, a haunting soundtrack to the tragedy that had become my life. As I stepped back into the night, the reality of my situation hit me like a freight train. My marriage, my family, my entire world had crumbled around me, leaving me standing in the ruins, alone and broken. Fuck, I whispered into the darkness, the word a prayer, a curse, a plea for a reprieve that I knew would never come. The days following the confrontation with Chris were a blur of anger, whiskey, and sleepless nights. My once orderly life had spiraled into chaos, each moment tainted by the sting of betrayal. I was a ghost haunting the remnants of my past life, unable to move forward, unwilling to let go. But as the initial shock began to wear off, a new, fiery determination took root within me. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. Jenna and Chris had made their choices, now it was time to make mine. I wasn't just going to lie down and accept this fucked up hand I'd been dealt. No, I was going to fight back, but not in the way they might have expected. The first step was getting my shit together, starting with a visit to a lawyer. I needed to know where I stood legally, especially when it came to my boys. They were my world, and I'd be damned if I was going to let Jenna's betrayal rip them away from me. I found myself sitting across from a lawyer, Mr. Davidson, a man whose reputation for being a ruthless advocate for his clients had led me to his door. His office was stark, no nonsense, much like the man himself. Mr. Mercer, I've reviewed the information you provided, Davidson began, his voice as sharp as his gaze. You have a solid case for full custody, given the circumstances. The affair, especially with a family member, puts your wife in a less than favorable light. Good, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I want full custody of my boys. Jenna, she made her choice. I need to protect them from this mess. Davidson nodded, jotting down some notes. Understood. We'll also need to discuss financial arrangements, alimony, child support, the works. It's going to be a battle, Mr. Mercer, but I assure you, I'm in it to win it. Thank you, I replied, feeling a semblance of control for the first time in days. I'll do whatever it takes. They're all that matters to me. As I left Davidson's office, a plan began to form. Jenna and Chris had taken everything from me, but they wouldn't take my sons. They wouldn't take my dignity. It was time to turn the tables, to show them that I wasn't just going to roll over and accept defeat. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal preparations, meetings, and gathering evidence. Davidson was a godsend, his expertise guiding me through the legal maze with a steady hand. But as much as I was fighting for my boys, I was also fighting to reclaim my own sense of self. Jenna and Chris had shattered my trust, but they wouldn't shatter me. Amidst the chaos, I found solace in running. Each step pounded out my frustrations, my anger, my pain. It was on one of these runs that clarity struck like lightning. This battle wasn't just about custody or divorce, it was about respect, about not letting their betrayal define me. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and blood, I stopped mid-run, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I looked out over the city, a sprawling maze of light and shadow, and made myself a promise. They're gonna regret making that mistake, I whispered to the dying light. I'm coming back from this stronger, fiercer. They've awakened a fucking dragon, and they're going to feel my fire. With renewed purpose, I turned and headed back home. The road ahead was going to be tough, no doubt about it. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt ready to face it head-on. Jenna and Chris had taken the first shot, but the war was far from over. And I was just getting started. The courtroom was cold, sterile, a stark contrast to the raging emotions that churned within me. Sitting there, waiting for the proceedings to begin, I felt a calm resolve settle over me. This was it, the moment of truth. The culmination of weeks of legal battles, strategy meetings, and sleepless nights. Today, I would fight for my boys, for my future. Jenna sat on the opposite side, her lawyer whispering in her ear. She looked pale, nervous. Good. She should be. Next to her, Chris, looking equally uneasy, avoided my gaze. I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction at their discomfort. They had brought this on themselves, after all. Mr. Mercer, are you ready? Davidson's voice cut through my thoughts, bringing me back to the present. I nodded, my jaw set. Let's do this. As the judge entered, the room fell into a hushed silence. The next few hours were a blur of legal jargon, accusations, and testimonies. Davidson was relentless, painting a clear picture of Jenna's betrayal and its impact on our family. He highlighted her indiscretion with Chris, emphasizing the instability it brought into our home, the home of our children. When it was Jenna's turn to speak, her voice trembled. I know I made a terrible mistake, she began, casting a fleeting glance in my direction. But I love my children. This affair, it doesn't change that. Her words rang hollow to me. Love? Her actions had shown me what her version of love meant. Betrayal. Deception. Pain. Davidson cross-examined her, his questions sharp, calculated. Isn't it true that your actions have directly harmed the emotional and psychological well-being of your children? He pressed. Jenna faltered, her facade cracking. I didn't intend for no further questions. Davidson cut her off, turning towards the judge with a look of satisfaction. The judge took a moment, reviewing his notes, the tension in the room palpable. Finally, he looked up, ready to deliver his verdict. In the matter of custody, given the evidence presented and the circumstances surrounding this case, I am awarding full custody of the children to Mr. Alexander Mercer, he announced, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom. A wave of relief washed over me, so strong it nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. I had won. My boys were safe. They were mine. But as I looked across the room at Jenna, at the devastation written across her face, a part of me couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. We were supposed to be a family. We were supposed to grow old together, watch our boys turn into men. Outside the courtroom, Davidson clapped me on the back, a broad smile on his face. Congratulations, Alex. We did it. Yeah, I replied, the victory feeling bittersweet. We did. As I made my way through the courthouse, a reporter approached me, her microphone poised. Mr. Mercer, how do you feel about the court's decision today? I paused, considering her question. This was my chance to set the record straight, to tell my side of the story. I'm relieved, I began, my voice steady. Relieved that my boys are safe, that they'll be with me. But let's not forget what led to this moment. A family was torn apart because of selfish decisions. My ex-wife and brother will have to live with that for the rest of their lives. And what about you, Mr. Mercer? How will you move forward from this? She pressed. I took a deep breath, my resolve firming. I'll rebuild. I'll make sure my boys have the stable, loving home they deserve. As for Jenna and Chris, I paused, a cold fire burning in my gaze. They're gonna regret making that mistake. Not because of vengeance, but because they'll see what they lost. They'll see us thrive without them. Turning away from the reporter, I stepped out into the sunlight, the weight of the past few weeks lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Hope for healing, hope for the future. Jenna and Chris had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. As for me and my boys, we were just getting started on our new beginning. They thought they had broken me, but they were wrong. I was Alexander Mercer, and I was unbreakable. The dust had settled, the courtroom battles a thing of the past, but the scars remained. They said time healed all wounds, but some cuts were too deep, leaving marks that no amount of time could erase. Yet, amidst the ruins of my former life, I found strength I never knew I had. I focused on my boys, on building a life that was ours and ours alone. They were my beacon in the darkness, guiding me towards a future I was determined to make bright. Months turned into a year, and slowly, the bitterness that had consumed me began to fade. I won't lie and say I forgave Jenna and Chris because I didn't. But I learned to let go of the hate, for my sake and for my boys. They deserved a father who was present, not lost in the past's shadows. It was during this time of rebuilding that I met her, Eva. She was unlike anyone I'd ever known. Strong, independent, with a fire in her eyes that both challenged and intrigued me. We met by chance at a local coffee shop, a spilled drink and a shared laugh the catalysts for something unexpected. "Shit, I'm so sorry," I apologized as my coffee drenched her table. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine, and any words I had vanished. There was an intensity about her that caught me off guard. "It's fine, really. Gives me an excuse to get another latte," she said, her lips curving into a smile that hit me straight in the chest. "I'll buy you that latte." "It's the least I can do," I offered, still reeling from the immediate connection I felt. "That's not necessary, but I won't say no to a free coffee," she teased, her smile widening. That latte turned into hours of conversation, and before I knew it, I was sharing parts of my life I hadn't spoken of in months. Eva listened, her presence a comforting balm to wounds I thought would never heal. "I can't imagine going through that," she said, her hand reaching across the table to briefly touch mine. "But look at you, rising from the ashes. It's inspiring." Her words, simple yet sincere, struck a chord within me. Eva saw the man I was beneath the pain and the anger, and she didn't run. She understood loss, understood pain, and yet she faced the world with a strength that left me in awe. Our friendship blossomed into something more, something deep and profound. Eva became a part of my life, and my boys adored her. She brought laughter back into our home, her presence filling the spaces that grief and betrayal had once occupied. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset, the boys playing in the background, Eva turned to me, her eyes reflecting the dying light. "Alex, I know I can't replace what you've lost, and I don't want to. But I'm here, for you and your boys. If you'll have me," she said, her voice laced with a vulnerability that made my heart swell. I took her hand in mine, the weight of her words grounding me. "Eva, you've given us something I thought was lost forever, hope. You're not a replacement, you're a new chapter, one I want to write with you." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes, and in that moment, I knew that love could be found in the most unexpected places, at the most unexpected times. Eva wasn't Jenna, and I was grateful for that. She was her own person, a force of nature that had swept into my life and made me believe in love again. The road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but with Eva by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came our way. Jenna and Chris had taken so much from me, but they hadn't taken my ability to love, to rebuild, to find happiness again. As I watched my boys play, their laughter a sweet melody in the evening air, I realized that this was what true strength looked like. It wasn't about never being broken, it was about the courage to build something new from the pieces. Eva squeezed my hand, a silent promise of the life we would build together. A life built not on the ruins of the past, but on the possibilities of the future. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I embraced my new beginning, my heart full of gratitude for the unexpected journey that had led me here. I was Alexander Mercer, a man who had loved, lost, and dared to love again. And this time, I knew it was forever.